Hey everyone, happy Monday. Welcome to Social Business Hour number 11. You may notice that the social whirlwind, Brian Fanzo, is not in the co-host seat today. Today I have the uber cool Daniel Newman. Say hey, Daniel.
I tweet slow and talk a little bit slower, but I think we're going to have a lot of fun today, Rachel. Thanks for having me on the show.
I do as well. And our guests today are the badass duo behind Vsnap. We have Dave and Guillaume. Say hey to everybody, guys.
Hey, guys.
Hey.
So before we get going, I kind of want to throw it out to you guys to give a little background about who you are, what you do, and then we'll roll into the questions.
Sure. I'm the CEO and one of the founders at Vsnap. We are basically video messaging for sales users. So our users are sales reps who are looking for an efficient way to convey tone and trust and kind of create that human connection with the prospect that they haven't met yet. You know, there are all these situations where a prospect hasn't agreed to a live interaction or a demo call, but you as the seller still want to convey tone and create that human connection, and that's what Vsnap and short video messages allow you to do.
I love that.
Awesome. And my name is Guillaume. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Vsnap. I've been a huge fan of the Social Business Hour Twitter chat for a while now. I've been a long-time participant, and I can't wait to be on it as a guest. It's pretty exciting.
I love when marketers validate what other marketers are doing. So Guillaume, thank you very much. And no, I really do appreciate it. It's awesome to meet you. I can't tell you how long I've been writing about how content influences the new buyer's journey. And I think we've really gone from a world where the content's going to be written, and a lot of written content and blogs and articles, to a world where, again, this South by and this whole explosion with Meerkat and some of these different things, it's just validating that video has a huge, huge potential in the way that people want to be engaged. So I love having you guys on the show. I can't wait to hear your answers. Of course, before I jump into the show, we do got to do a little bit of our officializing of the show. We do have a partnership. SBiz Hour, Social Business Hour, does have a strategic alignment with IBM Social Business and their New Way to Work campaign. So we want to thank them in part for sponsoring this show. And now, Miss Rachel, that I've done that, and remind everybody how much we love the folks at IBM Social Business, I'm going to hand it over to you, and let's start firing off some questions because I've got some learnings to do today.
So earlier I was actually patting myself on the back a little bit because I know I started talking with Guillaume about being a guest probably at least 2 months ago, and it's just been quite recently with the Meerkat explosion that video is now back in the forefront. So your guest appearance could not be more timely. So question one is, video is the new black. What has spurred this latest surge in video use?
Well, I think at a high level, I would kind of draw a couple of distinctions within this sort of broad bucket of video. One is the distinction between synchronous video, like what we're doing now, that it's live, that it's real time, and asynchronous video, like what we do at Vsnap, which is exclusively message-based. That's one kind of important divider. Those are really different animals. And then I would also draw a big distinction between, you know, to use a word that Daniel referenced, content versus individual communication, you know? Like the idea of video as content is very different than me using video to speak directly to you. And that, as in the example of this conversation, can be repurposed as content, but you know, in its first definition, it's really a communication tool more so than a content tool. So I think this explosion of video, this idea of video as the new black, is just that there's more possibilities in every one of those quadrants. You know, synchronous versus asynchronous, content versus communication, business tools as well as consumer tools, and I think that the kind of explosion in the application layer of video is what's allowing for so much really fertile experimentation and people to capture kind of business value and so forth.
I think that's an absolutely great point, and I do think that you help demark those two lines because there is that kind of that raw, real video, but there's also that like professional messaging. It's kind of like, how do you wrap a bow tie around a commercial and then hyper personalize it and then put it in the inbox of, say, just a couple of the right people, or maybe it's a couple thousand of the right people. And I think we really have to look at, how do we do that? How do we get on video and say hello in a 30-second campaign where you actually are really talking? You know, we talk a ton about one-to-one marketing, And I think what you guys are doing really, really kind of does lead us in that direction.
Yeah, yeah. We think a lot about whether the user is in marketing or sales, and the tools are fundamentally different depending sort of where you sit. We think a lot about kind of the customer journey coming through the funnel, and that point sort of after marketing automation where that lead gets picked up by sales and really engaged in a one-to-one way. In our worldview, there's this really transformational moment, which is somewhere around the SQL, the sales qualified lead, where you go from the conversation being about information and content to really being about emotion and that individual buyer's needs. It goes from being kind of a one-to-many conversation that's segmented and personalized to a one-to-one conversation that's really authentically individual and personal. And so, which video tools are the right ones kind of depend on where you are in that journey. That's how we see it.
So I kind of want to take a step back. I know you threw out some terms that the audience might not be particular with, but actually leads nicely into question 2. So what is asynchronous video, and what is its key benefit?
Sure, thanks. Asynchronous only means that it's not live, it's not real time, it's not you and I, agreeing to a scheduled interaction via video. Asynchronous is I record a video for you, Rachel, and I send it to you either in an SMS message or a tweet or an email or a LinkedIn message. Whatever the delivery mechanism isn't important, but you are able to consume that message, on your own schedule. And then depending on what tool you need, what tool you're using, the sender probably gets real-time notifications and analytics and all that kind of stuff as well.
I love that. On the Twitters, people are now putting out video is the new black in the hashtag. So people are already buying into, Rachel, your new term. So, if SBiz Hour doesn't trend, maybe we can get video is the new black to trend. But so for everybody out there, kind of a simple example is this, right? We are sort of doing synchronous video right now. And I think we're going to lead you into a question to talk a little bit more about that. But asynchronous, for instance, might be you jumping on, recording a 30-second introduction and then putting it up on YouTube, and then either emailing, promoting, building landing pages, and then people being able to consume that at any time. So, we've got novices out there all the way through experts. So I just want to make sure everybody out there really grasps this as we continue to move through this interview.
Yeah, I think that's a good distinction, and I would just add that there's another subset there, Daniel, which is the example you gave is recording the video, putting it on YouTube. So that's kind of an inherently public example. And what we see in our business is that the more private example, where I record the video specifically for Daniel and distribute it in a way where really you're the only one who gets it, that behavior just creates a lot of benefits in terms of action by the recipient, by the prospect or the customer,
So a man after my own heart, not only are you going to make it personal, you're also going to make it totally private, totally towards one-to-one towards that person. And personally, I love that. I think you can do that with mass messaging, but I think there's so much more potential with social data and information and CRM and stuff to make sure that the messages we're delivering to people is much more hyper-personalized than the way we're doing it today.
And I think that's also one of the key distinctions between sales and marketing. It's something that Dave talks a lot about. Marketing is fundamentally one-to-many, and sales is fundamentally one-to-one. And so we sort of really think of, we use Vsnap and really personal video as that kind of, in a very sales context, one-to-one, from one person to another.
I think another key benefit, and one that I definitely appreciate, is that it's non-disruptive. I can watch it when I choose to, versus live streaming or other forms of video where you require, reciprocal action from the other person. This is just, I see it came through, but I can't stop what I'm doing right now. But I can watch it when I'm ready and still get the same value, which I think is really powerful.
One of the interesting things we see in our data is that the more senior the recipient is, if you're trying to reach somebody at an executive level, it tends to be true that they watch them at like 9 o'clock at night, because it doesn't necessarily sort of interrupt their day, but they do consume it, and you get to kind of engage that person in a way that's really rich and emotive and robust, and really creates that sense of tone and trust and so forth. But they do it on their own schedule, exactly like you're describing.
I think a lot of those people, the way they could have consumed like email would be a good parallel too, because a lot of them, a lot of the most senior executive clients that we work with, I'll get emails at 5 in the morning and at 9 at night. That's when they'll respond to most of the strategic conversations we're having. It's very odd times. And it's because during the day they're operating businesses. It's during the day they're actually running meetings, doing things that are integral to their business. And then on, at 9 at night, they're sitting watching TV at home with their wife and kids on the couch, and they're on their iPad and they're flipping through, checking emails and responding. And that's when they're actually digging and opening some of the type of content that you're creating. So, which brings me to the next point, synchronous and streaming, right? So that's kind of what we're doing right now. We're in real time. We're streaming real time, both in, on this Meerkat stream I've got, on this YouTube stream, and on the Twitters. It's all kind of real time synchronous communication. It's more common today. So what are some of the pros? Obviously I know you guys are selling an asynchronous platform, but what are sort of some of the pros that you see there, integration points, and then what are some of the cons that are really leading people towards looking more at asynchronous?
When you say the pros, you mean about synchronous, Daniel?
Yeah. What are some of the things you still see as really relevant, good opportunities to utilize that platform?
Oh, I mean, it's awesome. Look, I can read your face. When you're talking, I'm able to digest that. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I think we all kind of know that stat of 90% of communication is nonverbal, and our brains are built to kind of interpret facial expressions, and cadence, and tone of voice, and all that kind of stuff. And so asynchronous interaction, whether that's in person or in video, gives you a lot of that. But obviously, so I think it's less about kind of like, is A better than B or B better than A? It's more about what's the use case. And there are places in the customer journey or the buyer journey where the use case requires that you be asynchronous because that prospect hasn't agreed to a live interaction yet, or because that prospect is an executive and is impossible to engage, during the workday, or some other situation like that. You got to be asynchronous because that's just what the situation requires. And then there are other places in the journey where you've already had a demo call, you're kind of moving further toward the purchase decision, and now we need to engage in a synchronous, interactive way so that the transfer of information back and forth can be more, higher fidelity and richer and real time and all those things. So I think for me the question is really specific to the use case.
I love that. Go ahead, Rach.
No, I was just going to say what Daniel touched on earlier about, a lot of business professionals, they're busy running their business. Like decision makers are incredibly hard to get on a call, particularly video. So I think that you can still leverage the power of video with an asynchronous format and hit them up on their own time and take them to the next level. And I think that's definitely the benefit for me versus live streaming.
Yeah, some of the content angle, and I know you talked about communications versus content early on, but I still kind of think, I can't tell you how often, as someone who writes a lot, I publish a lot of stuff every day, people will meet me finally and they'll be like, I feel like I know you, just because I've been reading your stuff for a while. I have to imagine video, because they say, like, what is video in terms of compared to a written word? It's like a million words a minute or something, in terms of how many emotions it can create. And I'm sure you guys have these data points in your mind. But that people, by the time they finally do meet you after seeing you in asynchronous, or like the example I gave about seeing you in YouTube, or maybe you through a much more personalized message, they finally meet you and they're like, God, I felt like I knew you. And even though that synchronous conversation never took place, just having seen you either once, twice, 3 times on video, they felt like they really started to build a relationship with your persona. And that's powerful.
I do this all the time. So one of the big use cases that we found a lot of value with our product is when you're heading to a conference or any kind of business event. And you try to build your schedule ahead of time so that you can connect with Jack and Tom and Nancy and whatever. And when you get that meeting booked, you send a little video message ahead to say, hey, Jack, I'm really looking forward to seeing you, in Cleveland or wherever it is, and just want to put a face with a name. What we see, for one thing, is when you walk into the event, people come to you, you kind of turn the room around, and they're like, right, there's Dave. I know that's him because he sent me a video message. And so it really does create that little bit of, like, instant rapport that you're talking about. That's definitely true. And again, we focus a lot on use cases and applications, and one of those is around business events where you have a big expenditure, you have a big budget, a lot of money going into that, show in Vegas or whatever, and it's just another way to kind of get more value out of it.
No, absolutely. So let's holistically look at video for a second here. We went asynchronous, then we talked a little bit about synchronous, but video in the business environment is huge. We're seeing just this explosion of applications, both in social and non-social realms. Why is it so, why is video in the business environment proving to be so powerful compared to, you know, what I'd say are more traditional business communication methods.
I mean, let me ask you a question, Daniel. If you go online right now and you download a white paper and it asks you for your phone number, do you put your real number?
Well, I'm actually, it's a great question. I'm in the process of, I've been looking at buying cars, and when I actually, it hits me up, like if I want to get an estimate of value on my car, they'll may say put in your name, number, because they want to solicit me to dealers. I've been putting in the number 123456789, and then I give them an email, like a junk email box that I can check, but that I never would actually go back to other than to just get this email. So yeah, this is you're answering a great question as related to the fails of inbound marketing.
Well, it's just that, you know, it's about this assumption that we all have about who the seller is that's going to call. You know, like even people like salespeople that's our people. You know, that's our tribe. We love them, but even folks who sell tend to not give their real number because they don't want, you know, that guy to call. And so so why is video so powerful? Because it lets the seller have an efficient way to show that he's not that guy or that gal. And it lets the buyer have an efficient way to see that this person is an authentically knowledgeable, helpful resource. And when that happens, the buyers, you know, choose to engage. And so that's it. I think the human layer has always mattered in business, you know, forever. That's been the case. And this is really the first time in history where we're doing a business at a distance so often, so frequently. And so sellers have to evolve their behaviors to kind of address this empowered buyer. And we see this as one of those behaviors that they have to, you know, learn, even though it's hard.
Can you put any data behind that? Just because I love data, like that people truly, that defense wall is broken down and people are more responsive to an asynchronous video than, say, an asynchronous email or white paper?
Yeah, sure. We have a bunch of data around it. You know, we have one customer, a big online education company called Penn Foster, that did a pilot where they introduced video messages into their selling process using Vsnap. They put 10% of their sales reps to change their protocol to use a video message rather than an email. And that cohort across 1,635 customers, so pretty big data set, increased their close rate by 34%. So that's not like just increase their conversion or whatever. That's the actual close rate of a student enrolling in a class. We also have data around increasing the conversion rate from the lead to the live call. We've seen that lift as high as 41%. So it's pretty easy to set it up and kind of track the impact to whatever the metric is that you're trying to move. One of the keys, though, is it's not a good top of the funnel behavior. Again, we focus on sales, not marketing. So if I send you a video message but we haven't met before, it's easy for you to ignore that. If, however, you've engaged with me a little bit, you've downloaded a white paper or followed me on Twitter or whatever, and then I send you a video message, that converts to the next step at a really, really high rate.
So you're actually talking about a second step, which is sort of the CRM component, the connecting to the funnel, the top of funnel, middle of funnel, that you guys not only maybe have power at the top of funnel, but really maybe even an exponential effect in the middle of the funnel that,
yeah.
When you've connected to somebody.
What I'm actually saying is we don't really have power at the top of the funnel. It's not, as an individual video message is not really a good, it doesn't cost out for the creator, for the sender to do that at the top of the funnel. It's better to get a little bit of engagement from that person and then you know, use video messages to kind of wrap that interaction in this human context, that human connection, and from there it really drives action.
So in regards to your data, how much effect do you think novelty plays on that? Because I imagine the recipients aren't getting very many video messages, maybe from friends or family, highly unlikely in a business setting. So kind of a two-part question. So the role of novelty, and then where do you see this, you know, a year from now, 2 years from now? We actually had a question from Michael on Twitter asking, you know, will we just see too much video in the future? Will we become numb to it, much like we do a lot of canned emails?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I would, you know, let's use Twitter as the example. You know, remember when it was like really novel that you would get a real-time tweet from a business representative, and then that became the bar. And now any business that's not engaging with you that way, you know, that's just not acceptable anymore. And so I think that the bar for customer engagement tactics is always moving, and it may be the case that at some point people are like, oh, I'm sick of getting these video messages. We don't think it's really novelty, though, Rachel. We really think it's about emotion. You know, like people are fundamentally emotional, and you need to have that trust and warmth and empathy and sincerity and humor enthusiasm, and all that nonverbal stuff that email and text are just terrible for. And I don't see an alternative to video. That's why I think people, the adoption rate is still kind of in its early stages, but I think it's got to happen because the world's getting noisier and more impersonal every day.
You are tugging on my heartstrings. I've been telling people that B2B buying especially is a very emotional process. Like, you've got to trust your sales guy, you got to love him, you got to believe he's going to make you a better you. That's not really true for a lot of B2C companies, but B2B especially, it's an emotional roller coaster.
The Consumer Executive Board put out a report called From Promotion to Emotion that I'll tweet it later when I'm not sitting here on video with you guys, and it's really about just how strikingly personal B2B purchasing decisions are, that in fact, according to CEB, they're twice as personal as the consumer purchasing decisions you make in your life.
Yeah, people use, they use rational logic to support their emotional feelings. They find the data to support the way they feel. I mean, that's been proven. I wrote an article on Forbes a long time ago called B2B is basically emotions is the #1 driver of B2B sales. And everybody thinks kind of like acting as the buyer for a B2B, you'd be less emotional because it's like you're really not buying for yourself, you're buying for your company. But those people are, one is the stress of being a buyer in B2B is often so high because your decision has such a lasting impact that, kind of radiates throughout the organization that you want the decision to be really good. So it becomes super personal. And because it is your business, the buying, you end up building really, really strong personal relationships with people you buy from because you want that trust. You really, really want to be able to trust that person you're buying from. So that does connect you. And video definitely has that potential. And like I said, in a world of signals and noise, to at least stand out from the crowd, right? And I mean,
yeah, and what we see is the view rates are really high if you use video messaging after the point of engagement in the way that I described. We have average view rates of over 50%, 50, and many people have view rates up around 70% if they use some kind of simple best practices that we coach them on. So again, I don't think it's so much a novelty thing. People really do have this need to see who's on the other end of the transaction and to have a feel for that person and that sense of accountability that comes with a video message, that sense of transparency that video brings. All of that is important to how we make decisions as human beings.
So your videos, basically, they sort of live like, they're not only asynchronous, but unlike all the content world we live in where everybody wants to put content on own sites to drive traffic, right? You're kind of creating more customized videos that are more one-to-one. They probably live on a server somewhere but are very rarely public-facing, very rarely indexed for search. So you see what YouTube's doing to build a powerhouse of page views. You see what Meerkat's doing to emotionally create this real-time thing. Does video need a home, or is there a place for video not necessarily being in an owned site and not necessarily being public-facing?
Yeah, it's interesting. I started the business around the time that Instagram got bought by Facebook, and everybody who was thinking about, smartphone video was basically trying to replicate that series of events. And if you remember, the term that you saw a lot a few years ago was it's Instagram for video, Instagram for video. And what we found, because we were focused early on the business applications of short personal video, business requires that something doesn't bubble up to the Facebook wall, And so we just had to embrace that, even though it meant that we were going to have a flatter growth curve in the business in the first phase, because you wouldn't get the benefit of all those eyeballs and all that kind of social virality. So that's a challenge of making that business decision. But yeah, what you're talking about is very insightful.
Now, are you seeing a huge adoption curve difference between B2Bs and B2Cs who are kind of getting behind what you're doing?
Well, we don't see the B2C side because, really, do you mean our consumer-facing customers versus our B2B-facing customers?
Yeah, what I'm saying is people who are utilizing Vsnap for B2B versus for B2C, are you seeing a greater adoption one side or the other?
Yeah, I mean, it's more B2B because typically the purchase price is higher than in a, so if you think of this as like a higher cost behavior as compared to, an automated email or some kind of marketing automation tool, naturally you want to use that higher cost behavior to close a richer sale. And those tend to be B2B sales, not B2C sales. there is some interest on the B2C side where it is a higher priced item, and it's a it's a company that really appreciates the value of touch. Then there's possibility there. But yeah, in our user base, it's biased toward B2B companies.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I keep thinking about, because we do a lot of B2B marketing, with brands and for brands, and we always say, if your content can emotionally connect to one person, that can be a 7, 8, or 9 figure value. So as much as, you're sort of looking at these vanity metrics, like how many people read your article or how many people tweeted your article, the real question is, did you connect to 5 people who could potentially take one action that could lead to X number of sales dollars because of the emotional and insightful response that they got from your content? And that's I guess where I keep saying it, there is a content component to what you're doing, because that content is, you're ultimately trying to drive a conversion, but it isn't about a lot of people. It goes back to personalization. It's about the right people and getting them the right message.
Yeah.
There was no question there. I was just reiterating, so I apologize about that. I'm getting really excited, though.
So I have a general question. I'm just curious. So I use Contact Monkey in my Gmail, and I get a kick out of how many times people open the same message. So I was curious, are you finding that people are opening the video messages more than once before replying, or is it just kind of a one and done situation?
It's not it's both. It's mixed. It's what we do is we give a sender. So Rachel, if you send a Vsnap to me and I watch it, you'll get a real-time notification saying Dave McLaughlin just watched your Vsnap. But if I go back and watch it a second time, we don't notify you again. You would have to log into our application and kind of look at your dashboard. So that's just how we handle it from a notification perspective. But the answer is it's a little bit of both. Okay,
so we have a couple questions from Twitter. First is from Andrew Jenkins regarding Vsnap. He's asking if he, is a paying customer, do Vsnaps expire or disappear?
No, eventually yes. The answer, but it's not like Snapchat. It's not like you can set it to disappear after it's viewed. We don't have that feature. It doesn't have that, that kind of attribute. But we host them for a year, so it stays live for a year unless you delete it, which you can do at any time. And when you do, it's gone from the server, and that's the end of it.
Okay, and then I have a question. I guess this will include you, Daniel, as our resident Meerkatter right now.
Meerkat.
From Josh McCormick. Corporate promotions are already starting to crop up on Meerkat. Does that lower the appeal for you in general?
Does that lower the appeal for me to use it because corporations are using it? No, I think you're always going to see the messaging and the branding is going to have a certain overlap, right? I think very rarely is any messaging only like personal. There's so much overlap nowadays between what individuals are saying. So, I've done a ton of research and even written books about, the role of influence in the buyer's journey. We all have bias, and we all have sort of a brand agenda in everything we talk about. Because, I always use Apple as an example. Me as a huge Apple fan, I will get in and become an advertisement for Apple when I start talking about Apple, right? So I think brands showing up on platforms is just part of the nature. Now, where I think the downfall is, and I'd love to hear the Vsnap guys' feeling on this too, is I think the downfall is that when the message becomes less social and more marketing. What I mean is social platforms are really meant to be encapsulating conversations. So you're supposed to go on a social platform, you're supposed to talk to people. Social media was only called social media for a long time, and then suddenly became social media marketing when a marketer decided to put their arms around it and say, we're going to start spewing brand content all over this platform. But what it really was designed for is ways that people could have conversations, like the phone, like an email, like a Vsnap. Ideally, social is a place to have a conversation. So if brands want to get on Meerkat, that's fine. But I think that what brands have to consider is that the reason people are here is to be engaged in a conversation. So think more Red Bull and think, less car dealer, in terms of the way you approach your meerkatting efforts as a brand. What do you guys think about that?
I think you hit on the two words of buyer journey, and how empowered the buyer is. And so I think anyone who's addressing themselves to the empowered buyer, the connected buyer, has to evolve how they do that. The always be closing mentality of Glengarry Glen Ross doesn't really fly in this world. You got to be helpful. You got to be a knowledgeable resource. You have to be engaged. All of these tools, real-time tweeting, asynchronous video, what they do is they allow you to demonstrate that you're other-centered, that you're centered around the buyer's needs, and that's what drives engagement, full stop.
I love that you made a Glenn Gary reference. I mean, anybody in the sales world that's out there, and this show used to be Social Selling Hour, and we've evolved ourselves because we realized social and selling, we want to sort of, not that we don't believe in selling through social media, but we believe that being in business is being social. And so that was why it kind of took that evolution, but that just doesn't work. I mean, there's so many instances on social where that takes place. There's so many instances like where you follow somebody and then a DM comes in 2 minutes later, like, here's my product, here's my book, and you get that, and you're like, I shouldn't have followed you, and now I'm sure I shouldn't have followed you. Or you link in with somebody. Let's talk on a business platform. You link in with somebody, and you're like, oh, they have a good profile. It looks like someone that's professional, and I'll connect with them. And then like 5 minutes later, you get a long email about some opportunity to get into business with them. And the new buyer's journey has shown it's all about building trust, and trust is being built through a whole bunch of activities, and that direct engagement is usually much later in the sale. That direct engagement, in the early stages of the sale, we really want to go out and talk to other people who are working with the brand. We want to hear from people who are in the industry, related industries, and get a feel, right? And then later, we want to hear from the brand. And that's why I think you kind of hit it on the head when you kind of pushed back on me about being top of funnel, because content from brands doesn't really work top of funnel, whether it's video or written. And I think you guys are kind of hitting on the head is why, but in the middle of the funnel, a video or a Vsnap from somebody can be way more impactful than, say, the email that somebody would send out or that white paper that they would deliver if the other stuff was done right, the earlier part of the marketing.
Right, and just to add to that, I think that something else is, it's not about being rehearsed. When you send an asynchronous video, we coach our customers all the time, just be genuine. Even if it doesn't look, perfect, even if you kind of mess up on a few words or whatever, that's okay, because the recipient is going to trust you a lot more if they kind of see that person who's kind of like just speaking like a normal human being as opposed to being super produced. And we see that those videos tend to be way more successful than those that are kind of canned and super salesy in a way.
So I got to ask, and we're going to get off the question train, but I think the audience would love this question. So, are you guys like integrating with CRM solutions and stuff? How are you guys sort of integrating to manage this so that a company can say, okay, how do I find the 15 people that this particular Vsnap I created would be right for?
Oh, well, that feels like two different questions. Yes, we're integrating with CRM. We just released the first piece of a HubSpot integration. We have a Salesforce.com integration that's in security review. We also just released a little Gmail plugin so that you can have a reply with Vsnap right in your Gmail interface, which is pretty attractive for the small business users. And then the second question, Daniel, was how do I know who to send the Vsnap to?
Yeah, that was two questions. I was leading the witness.
Well, I think the simple equation that people should think about is having defined triggers in their workflows. So for small businesses, this is a little harder because you have people juggling a lot of businesses, but for a lot of functions. But for teams that have structured sales processes, they have BDRs, and the BDR cultivates the lead and hands it off to the account exec or whatever. You basically want to define triggers. When X happens, I send a video message saying Y in order to move Z. And you think about that simple little equation. When this trigger happens, I send the video message, with this message, so that I can move this metric. And it really, like any new behavior, our view is it only works if you build process around it, if you build really simple workflow around it. If you treat it as something that you're going to use sort of ad hoc when it's a client's birthday or something, that's interesting, but the problem is the habit doesn't form. And so the way to get the habit to form and to really start to measure the impact in your deal velocity and your close rate is to build a little process around it. And we've gotten pretty good at like how to make that process effective, but super simple too.
Yeah, it's a lot like smart forms are. I know you mentioned Salesforce, HubSpot. They had sort of smart forms that every time someone would fill out a form and download one of their inbound pieces, then it would ask a different question the next time. It sounds like there's a really great integration point where it's like after they've downloaded this many things and taken this many actions, maybe instead of a different request, it actually triggers the sending of this particular video to somebody. It's like they've downloaded 3 things, and these particular 3 things mean they would be perfect candidates for this particular Vsnap. I think the marketing automation component is going to become more and more critical as we try to personalize to more people. And there's a lot of irony in that statement, but as we try to create more personalized messages for a lot of people, we're going to have smart automation.
Yeah, I don't think I agree, respectfully. I think that in sales happens between you and me. Sales is an individual pursuit. And once you move beyond that point of converting from a marketing qualified lead to a sales qualified lead, those are fundamentally individual actions. I don't think anything over a certain price was ever sold to more than one person at the same time. And so I just sort of see it that way, that in sales, I need tools that help me engage a specific person at a specific time and move that person to a decision. Tools that allow me to display attentiveness to that person in his or her specific situation. And that's really what drives that buyer. Earlier in the funnel, you're absolutely right that the ability to automate these to specific segments of the kind of buyer cohort, for sure. But when you get into sales, I'm a believer personally that really is a one-to-one conversation.
Is that a hurdle that you guys see pitching that to people, just because it could be seen? I mean, social in general is misconceived as kind of a time suck by the large majority of sales professionals still in 2015, despite overwhelming evidence to support the success factor. But to send a personalized video to 20 plus people a day could take some time, particularly if you're not sold on the super candid video messages as G's proponing. So how do you pitch that to people?
Yeah, I mean, that is the challenge of our business, is that we're proposing something that runs counter to this sort of prevailing belief system of marketing automation. My view on that is that marketing automation is awesome and powerful up until the point of conversion to SQL, where the lead gets handed off to the sales team. Then at that point, marketing automation should no longer be the philosophy that defines what happens. That becomes, again, just a different realm, just a different sort of set of obstacles. You have in the marketing portion of the funnel, you have a buyer who's in this information gathering mode. And as a seller, you're trying to pivot that person into a buying mode. And that's just we just see that as a point of complete transformation in the process. And so, yeah, it is challenging because there's what I see as a false promise out there that you can automate the sales conversation, and that you can allow the sales conversation to happen in a way that's one-to-many. And I don't think it's true. I call BS on that.
Well, I still think I'm not disagreeing. I mean, I'm a passionate one-to-one marketer. You'll find probably 100 articles written by me about one-to-one. But you will also find that I do believe one of the biggest fail points in most companies' go-to-market strategies is that connection point between qualifying a lead through marketing and handing it to the sales department. I can't tell you how many companies I deal with, anywhere from your $5 million mom and pops to your billion-dollar companies that have leads that literally, I remember one company I talked to had 1,250 leads through an inbound campaign, and they called their marketing, and it was a B2B, and I went through these leads at the end of the year. There was like 400 good qualified leads that were legitimate prospects for this company. They were a couple $100 million company, and they said it was a failure, and I asked them, what did you do with these 400 leads? And literally, they did nothing. The leads never even made it into the system. So they were spending money on SEO, they were spending money on inbound, they were spending money on content. They were bringing the leads in, and then they were calling their program a failure because there was no integration point between their marketing campaign and Salesforce. And I was mind blown that this can still happen in this day and age. But I think it's more common than not.
Well, look, I just think everybody has such pressure, and so when we have such pressure to kind of produce those outcomes, we're very susceptible to believing false promises as to what a product or a behavior can yield, and we just don't want to do that with the prospects and the customers that we engage with. We want to tell them in a way that we believe is more honest. Just hey, this is going to require, like, if you go to the gym and you use those machines, you will get fit, but dude, you got to use them, And you don't get to just walk in and kind of breathe around them and then you're ripped. It's not the way it works.
You mean you don't just sign up and get ripped?
Yeah, exactly.
Just take a pill? Well, I mean,
we can talk about that. So we had a clever tweet from Quick Muse. He's saying video is faster and requires less imagination and intellectual energy than words. And it's kind of an interesting point, just because a lot of salespeople, they have great knowledge, a lot of situational knowledge that's highly applicable, but having to formulate that in a written form, correct grammar, could actually be more of a time suck for them than just jumping on a quick 2-minute video. So I'm going to have to agree with Quick Muse. That was a great tweet.
I think there's the other side of that though, Rach, is you do have to remember though, a lot of salespeople, people are different communication types. Some are visual communicators, some are written communicators, some are verbal communicators, and salespeople tend to be more of those verbal visual than written, and a lot of them tend to struggle. There are sales guys that can write well, but I know a lot of salespeople that are tremendous in front of a client and literally can't write a 3-sentence email that's coherent. I'm sure you guys see that at Vsnap, don't you?
I think the other thing we see is, there are more introverts in sales than sort of the stereotypes suggest. And so you're right, it's not a monolithic group. It's not all like, hey, it's just more varied than that. And so people have different natural comfort levels with different tools and tactics and risk levels and all that.
And that also goes into the stereotyping of what an introvert is, because salespeople tend to be very good once the door's open. That's why most aren't good cold callers, because they say, oh, I need a sales guy that can close. Well, they can't walk into just a room and become closers. But if they start that relationship, they play around at golf, have a beer, have lunch, then all of a sudden they're comfortable with you, then that dialogue opens up, and you can still be very introverted, yet very good at selling that way. But a lot of people think of an introvert as someone that just can't communicate, and that's totally wrong. And it's a different topic for another day, but I think you just brought it, it's a really profound point. So we had a question 6 that basically was about communication security and privacy apps and all that stuff is going on. And do you see the hot topic of privacy impacting what you're doing or impacting video in any way?
Well, yeah, I think it's got to be addressed in order for these behaviors to be adopted in regulated industries. I mean, that's just the table stakes, in certain use cases to be HIPAA compliant or FINRA or SEC compliant, that kind of thing. So our product, wasn't built to be used initially in regulated industries, and we haven't really dealt with that yet. I also think that, as you talk to bigger enterprise clients, they just have more of a knee-jerk concern around security issues, often in ways that are really valid and often in ways that really actually don't make any sense. But it's we respect it. Obviously, you got to respect it. It's the customer's kind of perspective. So the short answer is yes, that'll be relevant in the first phase of kind of evangelizing this behavior. We focused on use cases where that's not a core requirement.
Oh, that's great. I think privacy is going to continue to be a humongous topic, though, across the internet. And I think at some point we're going to have to figure out a way to actually have companies be somewhat transparent about the way they're using data. I mean, I think people are starting to get a little wiser, but I think we have a ways to go before that happens. So I think the question everyone's going to be dying to know is, who is doing well with video? Who are some companies? You guys have to be watching this all the time, whether it's on television or on in the digital space or mobile space. Who's kicking butt using video right now?
Well,
other than you.
One company that's obvious, Wistia, who they have a video solution themselves. They provide hosting, but I think they do an awesome job from the point of view of actual content. And they do this kind of DIY video making kind of tools, and I think that the way they deliver that content through video is just really interesting. I think we've actually watched their videos and actually built some lightning equipment and stuff using their content. So they're great. I also think that I mentioned I wrote a blog on HubSpot about using video to increase sales conversions, and one example I had was SEO Moz, which is just Moz nowadays, but their the Friday video, Whiteboard Friday video that they do, I think is a tremendous example of kind of using video to deliver content in a kind of predictable way, and it's just really enjoyable to watch. But I mean, of course, Red Bull is another company that's just using video extremely well.
They're like the center of every good content marketing example. They really did just crush it, didn't they? Just the whole.
Water was another one that used video and some pretty awesome from a content perspective.
Who was that?
Yeah, and
Charity
I was
work.
gonna say, yeah. I would say kudos to Rand too, because he has been doing that for many years, way before video was cool. So he definitely led the fight there. Big fan.
But to go back to your question, Daniel, from those examples are mostly content examples, to use sort of the vocabulary I suggested at the beginning, versus communication examples. And obviously Hangouts. I mean, here we are. Like, this is just such an easy, elegant synchronous video solution. I think Blue Jeans Network has a super slick product on that. I think in the asynchronous space, we see kind of a division of companies like us that are building a product for sales users, and then other companies that are building a product that's a little more of kind of video email marketing, the way I think about it. It's sort of more designed for one-to-many distribution. So, yeah, there's a bunch of people. I think the sort of range of players there is limited by some of the challenges that Rachel referenced, in terms of just kind of the varying comfort levels among different users of being on video, and also kind of selling and evangelizing a behavior that is a little bit contrarian for folks who have really kind of adopted the whole marketing automation promise.
Where are you guys at right now? I wanted to ask you earlier. Where is your office based out of?
Oh, we're in Boston.
Okay. Boston. Guillaume, you're not from Boston, right?
No, I'm from France originally. I came here in the late 90s.
Your Boston accent is leaving, say park my car in the yard, and let's see how that comes out. Where do you park your car, Guillaume?
No, I
Are you
can't.
kidding? He rides his bicycle. He's French.
Yeah, that's right.
I'll give a shout out to my buddy Olivier Blanchard, who would get a good laugh out of that too if you happen to be on the Meerkat. So on the we actually have 98 people watching on Meerkat, which is crazy, and I want to thank everybody. But this hangout's been great. As we kind of wrap and then like to talk, the audience and see any other Twitter questions, we did have one more. This is actually always Rachel's favorite question. Is I think about the past, she thinks about the future. That's why she's smarter than me. And we like to ask our guests to tell us a little bit in their respective field of expertise. So what do you sort of predict the impact will be of video in business in the future? And maybe talk a little bit about video holistically and then a little bit asynchronously, so you can talk about where maybe your products are going to go.
Well, I mean, the first sort of obvious piece is that the technical infrastructure and underpinning for using video in more ways is getting stronger every day. There's a quote that you always see from John Chambers at Cisco talking about, I don't even remember, I've seen it so many times I forgot what it says. Something like 80% of the internet, data is going to be video or whatever it is. So I think that just like, again, the technical kind of infrastructure piece is getting stronger every day and allowing more and more uses and higher quality and so forth. That's kind of number one. My belief is that as more millennials come into the workforce, there's going to be greater adoption of new applications of video and kind of new uses of video, like the use cases that we focused on at Vsnap, or like this one that we're engaged in right now. And so what do I think? I think it goes back to this whole idea that, if you're smart enough to recognize that the buyer has the power, unlike in the past, then you're smart enough to know that you need to evolve the behaviors by which you address that buyer. That's right. Evolved. And
the book. You said it. I loved it.
I would just propose that you write another version of that changes the subheadline to "Sales is doomed" instead of "Marketing is doomed."
Well, it says "Marketing as we know it is doomed," and it talks a lot about that one-to-one. It was all about that. So you said it. I would never have plugged it because Rachel knows I don't plug stuff, but you happened to say evolved, and you talked about being doomed. It was just too perfect.
Yeah, so I think it's Darwinian, man. I think your choice of word is right on. Like, either you're going to evolve the tools and tactics that you use to address this empowered buyer, or you're gonna be extinct.
Yeah, and I don't think sales is doomed. I think their role is becoming even more critical as our buyers are getting smarter. We have new communication tools, new networks. The buyer's role has never been as important as it is now, so they're not doomed.
Unless they read the book or listen to you guys, they're doomed. That's marketing at its very best. But You know, I think it's really, everything you're saying though really does sum up what everything we do at Millennial CEO and our media group is, whether it's Social Business Hour or Smack Talk on our podcast, is we talk about technologies like social, mobile, cloud. We talk about a lot about big data. We ask you guys a lot of questions about data, because it really comes down to this: is it's all about the humanization and communications and relationships that's built as a byproduct of technology, right? We don't build technology to solve technology problems. We build technology to solve business problems, communications problems, human problems, right? So behind what you guys are really doing is, it's not about a technology that allows us to create a video and send it to somebody. It's about a technology that allows a brand story to be heard in a way that's authentic and meaningful. Would you guys say that that's sort of your philosophy, or am I making this up on the spot?
Because we also don't think sales is doomed. We think, you know, sales as it has been in the past is doomed and needs to evolve. But we're a little less focused on the brand and a little more focused on kind of the individual seller and allowing him or her to, you know, kind of convey that. And obviously, we all know that's what brands really consist of, is sort of individual touch points with a company. So how the seller engages me shapes my perception of that company's brand. So, you know, I would say this, Daniel, here's what is finite: human attention. You know what I mean? I only have so much attention that I can give in my day. And if I communicate with you in a way that feels attentive to you, that's how you know you matter to me. You ask yourself that question: how do I know I matter to Dave? I know because he's giving me his attention. And so what a little video message allows you to do is to show the recipient, show the prospect, show the customer that they have your attention. And because it's a message and not synchronous, it allows them to see that in a way that's convenient within their own schedule. So it's very much about, it's about this authenticity of, like, I'm paying attention to your needs and I'm here to help you solve them.
Yeah, I love that. Truer words have not been spoken. So, Rachel, anything, you know, as we kind of start to wind down here in this last 5 minutes, you know, we'd love to give our community, I want to thank the community on Twitter. You guys have been rocking it today. Thank the community on Meerkat, 104 people watching this live. I just got you guys on video, so it's a great addition to the audience. People are very interested in what you guys have to say. Rach, anything we want to get from the crowd before we give these fine gentlemen a little chance to plug themselves and share with everybody where they can be found, seen, and heard online?
Well, it seems like our community are huge advocates for video, but I guess to throw it back to Dave and Guillaume, maybe as a quick takeaway, share again why sales professionals and just business professionals in general should consider video for business use.
Simply because video is the best way to convey emotion and the best way to convey attentiveness, and those are the things that will drive, you know, the buyer's movement through the purchasing process at a faster rate and at a higher rate of conversion. We're emotional creatures. That's how we make our decisions. And so you can't expect to move people at the highest possible rate if you communicate with them in a format, meaning text or email, that doesn't convey tone, warmth, sympathy, empathy, emotion, you know, humor, enthusiasm, all that stuff that is going to drive them to take action.
I think attentiveness was the key word there. And I was saying you have to be interested to be interesting. And I think there's no better format right now than video. So to wrap up the show, I'll share where we can connect with you guys, and we'll wish everybody a great week.
Thank you so much, guys. This is really fun. Thanks, Daniel.
Yeah, so we'll definitely put a shout out to everybody. Check out Vsnap on the Twitters. It's at Vsnap, and follow them. Check them out. See what they're doing. I gotta say, I love it, guys. I love that way of getting messages to people. Want to give a final little shout out to our friends, the New Way to Work campaign and the IBM social business team, for making these connections and for helping us to continually deliver great content to a great audience. And someone is begging me, so my last thing is someone says they want the name of the book. The book is Evolve, Marketing as We Know It is Doomed. That was not intentional, but it was by me, Daniel Newman, so check it out. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining this week of Social Biz Hour.
All right, cheers, everybody. Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Daniel.
Cheers.
Bye, guys.
Good job.